Hi, everyone, and welcome to the AWS Nordics Ask Me Anything Office Hours. My name is Gunnar Grosch. I am a developer advocate here at AWS. And this is the show where we every week have a guest on to talk about a specific topic. And you are able to then ask your questions and hopefully get them answered by that AWS expert we have on. So if you have any questions throughout the show, just pop them into the chat and we'll do our best to answer those. If we don't get to your questions straight away, don't worry. We'll try to cover them when it makes sense throughout the show. And this week, I am joined once again by Alexander Dragunov. And this time, we're going to talk about infrastructure as code and AWS CDK. So welcome to the show, Alexander.
So my name is Alexander Dragunov, and I also work at AWS as Gunnar, based in Stockholm, Sweden. And I'm a solutions architect, and I'm specialized in Windows workloads on AWS. So running .NET applications, SQL Server, Active Directory on AWS. But besides that, I'm a big fan of infrastructure as code and cloud development kit. So this is what we're going to talk about today.
And last time we had you on, Alexander, we talked about .NET on AWS, and you showed a small example using CDK that time. Will we see some .NET this time as well?
Yes, so I think I will mix my demos between TypeScript and .NET, because C# is my language of preference still, but I also like TypeScript, and both of these languages are supported by CDK, so we'll have demos in both.
That's great. All right. So once again, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. And everyone watching, welcome to the show. So Alexander, let's start from the beginning. What is infrastructure as code?
So it's quite simple. If you can code your infrastructure, then you can treat your infrastructure as just a code. So you can offer this code using any code editor of your choice. You can check it into your version control system. You can use your code review techniques with your team members before you deploy it to production. Then if you code your infrastructure, you can redeploy it, you can replicate it, you can repurpose it, and then you can run your infrastructure through your CI/CD pipeline. So I think that, and there are many more benefits, but I think these are the key ones.
And if you're not using infrastructure as code, it means that you're probably setting things up through the AWS console or using the CLI, perhaps, things like that.
Yeah, so when we talk about evolution of infrastructure as code, you're absolutely right. Like on the bottom layer, you do everything manually. So you do it through AWS console, and maybe you have some wiki pages which are describing what to do and how to do based on your team needs, but everything is manual. And if you go like to second level, then you script everything. So I know, create PowerShell scripts or Bash scripts, and again, script everything you want to do with your infrastructure. If you go like one level up, then you have infrastructure provisioning engines like CloudFormation or Terraform, where you declare the desired state of your infrastructure, in JSON or in YAML, and then these provisioning engines, they hide the complexity of state management, of rollbacks, grief detection, error management. So it's a great way to define your infrastructure, and many companies, they adopted this way. But this led to these templates to grow in size significantly, and then it became like harder to maintain these large templates. So the next idea was to create generators which will generate these templates for you. So you write your code in some familiar language, and then it just generates the CloudFormation template or Terraform or whatever. But still, I mean, it's you are bound to this CloudFormation template. And the next level is where CDK is. So it's where you define high-level abstractions of your infrastructure. And these are the abstractions which you can share within your organization, and yeah, they provide you a lot of convenient defaults. So you really define your infrastructure using like plain programming languages.
And we have a question now. So we talked about CloudFormation, we talked about CDK briefly. There's a question in the chat that mentions Terraform. Can you briefly, before we get to the question, just say what Terraform is?
So Terraform, it's also, so we can compare maybe Terraform with CloudFormation. So it's a declarative way to provision your infrastructure. And with Terraform, you write your infrastructure in a domain-specific language, like DSL, which is Terraform specific. And there is a way to integrate CDK with Terraform. It's called CDK for Terraform. So this is a way for you to write code in programming languages like C#, TypeScript, Python, and under the hood, CDK will generate Terraform templates. So this is like how you can integrate CDK with Terraform.
Right. So to answer just the question, are they compatible? Yes, they are compatible. You can use CDK to then create Terraform templates.
Yeah, and one more addition, you can also use CDK to generate Kubernetes manifest files. So it's a same idea under the hood, but instead of writing YAML manifests for Kubernetes, you can use CDK. You can write your C#, TypeScript, Python code, and CDK under the hood will generate with Kubernetes manifest files. So you don't need to deal with YAML files. You just write your code in the programming language.
And talking about AWS CDK, then you mentioned .NET and TypeScript before. What other languages are supported?
So as far as I remember, it's TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, .NET, and for .NET it's C#, F#, and even Visual Basic .NET, and then Java, and now we have support for Go language in developer preview, so it will be released quite soon.
Right. So when you work with CDK, and I know that you need to have Node.js. Is that right? Even
Yes,
though that might not be the language you're going to write in later on.
yes, that's correct, because so the only requirement is that you have Node.js installed on your machine, and the reason behind it is that CDK itself, it's written in TypeScript, and all the all the constructs were written in TypeScript, and when you use like other languages, it's just a like wrapper or mapping between like this language which you use, like C# and TypeScript under the hood.
All right. So, Alexander, should we perhaps pretty much straight away jump into showing something with CDK? I think that might help.
Yes, let's get started.
I'll open up your screen share.
Yeah, so this is my PowerShell. So let's just create a new project and see how the structure of this project look like. So will be demo 1. And I will do it in TypeScript. So first, as I said, the only requirement for CDK is Node.js. So how you install TypeScript, you just say npm install global AWS CDK. I did it already, so I will not run this command again. But once you have CDK installed, then you can access CLI. And the CDK CLI, it's just CDK. So I can type CDK version, and it says that I have version 1.100 installed on this machine. So in order to create a new project, I can say CDK init, And when I provide the template, so it could be either up. So when I say CDK init up, it will create a empty application, or I can say sample up, and in this case, it will create a sample application with one queue, one SNS topic, and connect them together through subscription. So I will create sample up. So we will see a bit of code, and then you specify the language. And it could be C#, F#, TypeScript, Python, but we will use TypeScript, for example. So it's running npm install to install all the packages. So it will take a few seconds.
And you're running this in PowerShell now, but that is, of course, not something you have to do.
Yes, it's cross-platform, so you can do it on Mac, on Linux, so it doesn't matter. Because, as I said, the only requirement is Node.js, which can run on all platforms. Yeah, so the project is created. So let's see what is generated. So we'll start Visual Studio Code. So this is the project. So first, let's see the code. So under the binary folder, there is a here we call a stack, and stack in CDK, it's a one-to-one mapping between CDK stack and CloudFormation stack, because under the hood, CDK it's using CloudFormation provision engine. So so CDK does not do provision of your infrastructure. So what CDK does, it generates CloudFormation templates, and when these CloudFormation templates, they are passed to AWS CloudFormation, which does the provisioning and all the good things that CloudFormation supports. So from CloudFormation perspective, it's not aware of existence of CDK. So CloudFormation just takes an YAML or JSON template and use it to provision your infrastructure. And how this CloudFormation template was created, CloudFormation is not aware of.
Or does care about either.
Yeah. So this is the stack, and so this is the entry point to application. And the stack itself, so this is how it looks like. So we define a stack, and inside this stack, we define a queue. So it's just a simple queue, service queue. We specify visibility timeout when we create a SNS topic, and when we add subscription to the queue. So it's very simple application. And also one important file to mention, it's called CDK JSON. So when you interact with CDK CLI, you should do it from the folder which contains this CDK JSON file. And if we open the CDK JSON file, it has this up node. So this up tells how to run your CDK application, or in other words, like how to synthesize your CloudFormation template. So in this case, we're running a TS node and passing the entry point to application. So when you generate your CDK application in .NET, then this up command will be .NET and then name of the .NET project. Or if it's Java, it will be Java. So it's the only language specific part of this CDK JSON or CDK. It just tells how to generate the CloudFormation template.
Right.
So let's do it. Okay. So we are inside this folder, and what it can run is CDK synth command. So what CDK synth does, it generates the CloudFormation template out of this code. So if we scroll up, so we will see that the queue is created, then queue policy is created, and SNS subscription and SNS topic. And then there is some metadata which is specific to CDK. And once it's generated, so we can see also that cdk.out folder is generated. So you see the generated template here as well.
So you still haven't created anything in AWS. You haven't deployed any services. This is just generating the CloudFormation template for you.
Yeah. So just to see what is the output of my CDK project, and if I want to compare, so if I want to see what is going to be deployed, I can run CDK diff command. So what CDK diff does, it checks what is already deployed as part of this stack to AWS to what I have in my CDK project. And in this case, we don't have anything deployed, so CDK diff should show all the new resources which are going to be created. So, and if we, at the end of the output, you see the resources with this plus sign. So indeed, we SQS queue going to be created, queue policy, subscription, and topic. So if we want to deploy it, we can just run CDK deploy. So, and first, because it's going to create a queue policy, it asks me, okay, is it really what you're going to do? Yes. And let me quickly switch to CloudFormation. So I will show that indeed what is happening behind the scenes is that CloudFormation is created. So just a second, I will find my browser.
In the meantime, there was a question if we can do this using Cloud9, which is a good question. But the answer is simple.
The answer is yes, and I think that CDK is pre-installed in Cloud9 environment, as far as I remember.
Yeah, so using it in Cloud9 is great. It makes it easy to get started with.
Yeah, so let me switch to my browser so to show the CloudFormation template. So if I go to CloudFormation,
I thought you were a Windows person, Alexander.
It's both. It's both. So I have this developer EC2 instance where I have all my developer tools installed, and I have Mac where I work with browser, Outlook, PowerPoint, streaming, etc. So this is the demo one stack, which was just created. And so what CloudFormation, or what CDK did, it's generated this template. And again, it's a template which we saw in Visual Studio Code. So we have queue policy, subscription, and some metadata. Also, it's I guess important to mention that what CDK project generates is like it's a tree structure of resources. So every resource, it has a path in this tree. So this queue, it has this path, demo stack, demo one queue, and then resource. So it's a main resource of this construct. And then we have like policy. And if you check the identifier, so identifier is based on this path. So we omit the name of a stack, so it will be name of a queue, and policy, and then resource is also omitted. And then it's a hash of this value. So that's how all resources we have identifiers based on their path in the tree.
So that's how CDK is then able to keep track of what you're deploying and any changes, difference to yes. Updates.
Exactly. So now let's do the change and see how it looks like. box. Yes. And also one more important thing about CDK, that you can also write unit tests. So this is how these tests look like in TypeScript. So we create our CDK application, we create our stack, and then you can verify that specific resources are created or specific attributes exist. So for example, we check that queue is created. So this is the expect statement that queue is created and visibility timeout is 300. So what we can do is we can run test. So that's how we can test that our infrastructure that we provision what we intend to provision, and if we have a team working on a project, that we have tests which ensure that nothing is broken.
So very similar in the way we do unit testing in applications, for instance, application development, but in this case it's for resources, making sure that it is creating the resources, it's creating them with the correct parameters or properties.
Exactly. So let's make a change. So for example, we decide that we need visibility timeout 600 instead of 300. So first we can run test and see that the test failed. Or maybe I need to synthesize first. So maybe this run will not synthesize it. No. Yeah. So test failed, and it says that different values in visibility timeout field. So exactly what you expect from the unit tests. But now if we run CDK diff, so the stack is already deployed, but we made this change. So let's see what CDK diff tells us. Yeah, so indeed. So what it shows us that, okay, visibility timeout changed from 300 to 600. So it's a good practice before deployment of CDK stack, just to run CDK diff to see that the changes you did is indeed what you intend to do.
Yeah, and it's not only showing that it is that queue that is changing, it's also showing that actual property that you're changing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite detailed. Okay, so maybe I will talk a bit about CDK constructs and different levels of constructs.
Let's just take two questions we have in the chat first. The first one is how CDK is different from serverless framework. And the serverless framework in this case, I am guessing is the third-party framework for deploying serverless applications, not SAM. But I'm not sure if you know the answer, Alexander. Otherwise, I can jump in.
I don't know because I haven't worked with serverless framework.
No, I have worked a lot with the serverless framework, and the serverless framework is infrastructure as code, very similar to CloudFormation, and some parts of it is actually built with CloudFormation resources. So it works in the same way as CloudFormation does. You define your infrastructure, or then your serverless infrastructure in that way. So the difference is the same as Alexander explained earlier on in regards to CloudFormation versus AWS CDK. The second question we have is for deleting resources. So for deleting dependent resources that are pretty heavyweight, like RDS, do we have some compile time checks help to detect failures early rather than at runtime?
No, it's only runtime, because as I said, what CDK does, it's only generates the CloudFormation template, and all the manipulation with resources is done by CloudFormation itself. So CDK cannot do any runtime checks. So it's not how it's built under the hood.
So then, you talked about constructs.
Yeah, so I want to show a few examples. So there are 3 levels of constructs in CDK, like level 1, level 2, and level 3. So level 1 constructs, it's just a one-to-one mapping between CloudFormation resources and CDK constructs. So they are just generated out of CloudFormation specification. So for example, if we create a VPC, so let me create VPC, but as a level 1 construct. So yeah, and as you see, the great thing about CDK, and because we use TypeScript, you get IntelliSense inside your development environment. So there is no way for you to misspell some properties or anything. If you use programming languages, that's great benefit. But when so all level 1 constructs, they have this CFN prefix. So if I want to create a VPC as level 1 construct, it will be CFN VPC. Name it. And then I provide properties. And the minimum required properties for VPC, it's a header block. So this is level 1 construct of VPC. So if we run CDK synth, we will have only VPC created. Yeah, so resources, my VPC, this is VPC, and this is the CIDR block which I specified. And then comes metadata. So it's only one resource created. And also, if you have AWS Toolkit installed for Visual Studio Code, then it can show you the CDK tree structure, which is very useful. So this is our demo 1 stack. And in demo 1 stack, so there is a metadata, but then there is only one resource, my VPC, and this is the CIDR block which I specified. So this is level 1 construct. But if we move to, yeah, and as I said, level 1 constructs, we said just one-to-one mapping between CloudFormation resources and CDK. But if we create VPC as level 2 construct, so it doesn't have CFN prefix, and we don't need to specify CIDR block this way, but we can specify, for example, number of availability zones. So now I'm creating a level 2 construct. It's again VPC, and I'm specifying that I want 2 availability zones. And let's see what is generated under the hood. And maybe we will do it in Explorer. So again, so there is my VPC, and there is a VPC created, same as before. But first, it has convenient default values. So by default, you have enabled DNS host names and enabled DNS support set to true. But also what CDK does, it creates, because I specified that I want 2 availability zones, it created 2 public subnets, each in one availability zone. It created 2 private subnets. It created internet gateway. So with one line of code, I have all boilerplate code for VPC created for me. And this is level 2 construct. So still in level 2 construct, there is like one main resource. In this case, it's VPC. And there are supporting resources created, like public subnets and internet gateway. So this is level 2 construct.
All right. So if you've ever set up the same using CloudFormation, you know that those templates are maybe 100 lines of CloudFormation, perhaps a bit more.
Yeah, let's see. So this is the stack for this VPC.
Yeah, it's a lot more.
It's a bit more. So there is some metadata, but still, that's a lot.
A few hundred lines of CloudFormation to set up the same thing that you did in a couple of lines.
Yeah, and if I'm not happy with default values, I can adjust anything I want. So I can say that, okay, I don't want, I know, DNS hostname support, or I want to specify specific CIDR blocks for subnets. Yeah, I can customize it how I want. But the good thing about CDK that it provides the best practice, most convenient default values. So
right.
I can start very simple. Like I want two availability zones. That's it.
So it can be opinionated if you wish, but you can also then override, of course.
Yeah.
So there is a question. You're using VS Code for this, and you talked about code completion made it easier. And do you know if you can use the same if you use JetBrains?
Yeah. So if you have your so C# code, for example, you can use JetBrains Rider because it's just a C# code. So you can use any development environment. And JetBrains, I think if you work with any kind of language like Python, Java, you can use IDs from JetBrains, and you will get all IntelliSense and code completion. So it doesn't matter what development environment you use.
All right.
So
that's great.
Okay, so let me show a bit more complicated example for level 3 construct. So I think I have it ready. And let me open it from Visual Studio for a change, because it's written in C#.
All right, so while this is loading, if you just joined us or joined us in the last 30 minutes, this is the AWS Nordics Office Hours. I'm Gunnar Grosch, and I am joined by Alexander Dragunov. We're talking about infrastructure as code and AWS CDK today. And Alexander has just opened up Visual Studio for us to show us. Was it a level 3 construct?
I will show level 3 construct. So this sample, it's what it does, it deploys a static website. So what we do here, so we create a S3 bucket, and we specify bucket name. We specify that it should have public read access because we want to host static website, and we specify default document, just index.html. And but we don't want to deploy only to create a bucket. We also want to put files into this bucket because it's our static website. So this is where we have this bucket deployment construct, and this is a level 3 construct. So what bucket deployment does, so what you do, you specify the sources, and sources, it's just a folder on a disk. So I have folder on a disk called site contents, which contains it's not part of a solution, so I can show it in the code. Second. So there is a folder called site contents, which has like one HTML file and two PNG files. And what bucket deployment does, it takes these sources, it archives them, it puts them to the CDK staging bucket, then it creates a custom resource in CloudFormation, which can grab the file from this staging bucket and create them and put them to this output bucket. So, and this is level 3 construct called bucket deployment. So we create a bucket. When we create bucket deployment to copy the content, and then we use cfn output construct to output the URL of a bucket which was created. So again,
Cool.
20 lines of code, but it's very easy to read. And in C#, all the dependencies, they are distributed as NuGet packages. So as you see, this is standard C# project, which has references to 3 NuGet packages. So CDK itself, CDK S3, and CDK S3 deployment. So this is another benefit of CDK, that you can create your own level 3 constructs inside your organization, and then you can share these constructs inside your organization using NuGet packages or NPM packages based on what language you use inside your organization.
So we have a pretty interesting question in the chat right now. So is there any downside to using CDK? Are there any use cases you would not recommend using CDK for?
Wow, it's a good question, because I don't think I would not recommend using CDK nowadays. So
even for smaller things, it doesn't depend on size of the project, anything like that?
I would not say so, because you can have CDK as part of your CI/CD pipeline. So it's just an additional step to generate CloudFormation out of your CDK and then deploy CloudFormation as you do it before. But
no, that's great. I think that's a great answer.
yeah.
And I can't really say that I've seen any use cases that I wouldn't recommend it for either.
Yeah, and also I haven't mentioned, but CDK is open source, so you can check all the sources on GitHub. There is a community around it, and there are nice community websites where you can browse different CDK constructs, CDK patterns, like for serverless applications and others. So there is a lot of places where you can learn from how to do things. So, and it's this community is just growing and growing. So, okay, I think I can show a bit more complicated example.
Torsten has actually perhaps a pretty good example that it might be easier sometimes to ship the infrastructure as code file with a software package, for instance. If you have a CloudFormation template in YAML or JSON, that's easy to just include for anyone to deploy it in CloudFormation. Alexander doesn't agree.
No, I'm just trying to build the model in my head.
Yeah, I would say that you have something you want to share. It's pretty easy to share a single YAML file or have a YAML file, so people don't need to have CDK running themselves, for instance. They don't need to install anything.
No, I'm just thinking aloud about this example with static website. So like without CDK, like how would you do it? So okay, like with like how would you easily put the content of this static website?
So, yeah, that's a tougher one, I think, for that specific use case, for sure.
Yeah. And I can show another example. It's CDK for container-based applications. And again, this is another example of level 3 construct. So what we do here. it's restoring. So first we create VPC. So you already saw it. So we create VPC and we specify that, okay, I want 2 availability zones. Then we create Elastic Container Service Cluster. And again, as a minimum, the only thing I can specify is in what VPC to create this cluster. So I'm creating the cluster and I'm specifying, okay, it should reside in this VPC, which I just created. Then I create task definition. So, and first I specify container options. So what will be the Docker image? And I will build this Docker image locally. So what I'm saying that, okay, I want to build it from the local asset called .NET App. And .NET App, it's a standard boilerplate ASP.NET application. And this is the Docker file for this application. So there's nothing specific here. So what we do is just build and run .NET application. And this is the Docker file under the .NET App. So inside my stack, I can just specify that, okay, I want to build container image from this local asset. Then I do port mapping. Again, I want to expose port 80. And I'm for task definition, I'm specifying that, okay, I want to use this container with this port mapping. And then this is, again, level 3 construct. It's called application load balanced Fargate service. So I guess it's, I mean, by reading the name, you can understand what it is. But so what it will do under the hood, it will create an application load balancer. It will create, it will use this ECS cluster, which we created before. It will create a task definition, and then it will run this Fargate task in this cluster behind the load balancer. So what we can do, we can just browse our .NET application, which was packaged as a container, uploaded to staging to CDK staging container repository, and then we can see this application accessible from load balancer. But what you do, I don't know, 10 lines of code, and if we run CDK synth here, you will see like how many resources are generated under the hood. So CDK will create security groups with minimum security group rules, which only allows load balancer to talk to your tasks. It will create IAM role for your task. It will build container image. It will push it to container registry, create a load balancer, attach a service. So CDK will do everything for you. So if we check CDK out, so first, as I said, this is the asset. So this is our .NET application from which the Docker image will be built. And then this is the template. So 800 lines of code generated for us by CDK. So, and imagine like doing all these things by hand, I know, creating the right roles, right security groups, etc. But here it's, you know, plain C# code, which is very easy to read, very easy to understand, and to see what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, I think comparing to that CloudFormation template, I think I don't want to say that this is the way to do it, but I think a way that many people do it is that they find examples, copy paste pieces of infrastructure as code and use those. And that also means that you might use things that perhaps isn't according to best practice, isn't up to date, or isn't secure enough.
Yeah, and then the question is like how to maintain this template, because 1,000 lines of code of like YAML and JSON, it's quite hard to maintain. For C# code, you can split it into different classes. You can distribute it as NuGet packages. So, for example, you can have different stacks for different parts of your infrastructure. So you can have stack for your networking part of your application, then you can have a stack for your cluster configuration, then you can have stack for your application configuration, and you can distribute it as just NuGet packages inside your organization based on all best practices that you have.
So let's say then that you are a company, you've built a lot of things using CloudFormation already. So the question is there a way to go from CloudFormation to CDK? Any tools to help you with that, or how do you see companies getting started?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and the answer is you don't need to do like big bang. Okay, just switch from CloudFormation to CDK and like rewrite everything. So what you can do, you can include the existing pieces of CloudFormation into your CDK application. So there is a construct called cfn include, and then you can specify the piece of CloudFormation which you want to include into your CDK stack. So this means that you can gradually rewrite your application from CloudFormation to CDK. Or also you can in CDK application, you can not only create resources, but you can refer existing resources. So for example, instead of creating VPC, you can, let me try. I don't know why, but so what you can do is you can like look up existing resources. So instead of creating VPC, you can say VPC from lookup, and you specify. And what you need to do, you need to uniquely identify this VPC. So it could be either VPC ID, or for example, there is only one default VPC in your account. So you can say, okay, VPC from lookup, and I want the default VPC. And because it can be uniquely identified, you will get your VPC from existing one, and then you can create a cluster in this existing VPC, and you can do it with any resources.
So that might be the process of switching from pure CloudFormation to CDK to start using the resources you already have within new CDK applications, or gradually switching over by starting to using those resources within your CDK.
Yeah, exactly.
So no tools, nothing automated.
No specific tools. So it's built into CDK.
Right.
I would say.
So if people watching want to get started with this, how do you think people should get started? What is a good way to start using CDK?
There is a great workshop which is available online. It's called CDK Workshop. The website is called cdkworkshop.com. And it has this step-by-step guide from very beginning to building application with DynamoDB, with API Gateway, with Lambda, and it's available in quite many programming languages. I think it's TypeScript, Java, Python, C#. So just go to this website and do this exercise, and you will have your hands dirty with CDK. So it's a great way to start.
Yeah, that's usually the way we recommend with a lot of things we talk about here. Get your hands dirty, start using it. I posted a link to the workshop in the chat now, so feel free to save that link. I also posted a few other links earlier on. Yeah, go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the very beginning, but there is not only CDK, but there is also CDK for Terraform and CDK for Kubernetes. So I can show how CDK for Kubernetes looks like, because it's also quite interesting, I think. So again, I installed CDK for Kubernetes. So let me create a folder. So Again, the only prerequisite is Node.js. So I have this CDK for Kubernetes version 1.0 beta 11. And if I want to create a new application, so I do CDK for Kubernetes init. And yeah, it will take a few seconds to install npm packages.
So this, yeah, just briefly, what is this? What are you doing, Alexander?
I'm creating a new CDK for Kubernetes application. So as you know, when you deal with Kubernetes, you need to write YAML manifest files, which defines the desired state of your Kubernetes cluster and resources in this cluster. But these are YAML files, and again, they could be quite long. You need to maintain them. So CDK for Kubernetes allows you to define your Kubernetes application, again in TypeScript or Python, and under the hood, CDK for Kubernetes will generate these YAML manifest files, which can be deployed to your Kubernetes cluster. So the idea is the same, that you just write your so you just define your resources here, and I have one simple application to show how it looks like.
And is this specifically for using with EKS?
No, it's with any Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, should be fine. So, okay, again, code which is quite simple to read. So what we do here, so first we create a label, and it's just an app, hello Kubernetes. Then we create a kube service of type of load balancer, and we are open port 80, and the selector is this label. So as you know, with Kubernetes, I mean, a lot of things are based on selectors, so you need to write them in a correct way to match. Otherwise, things will not match and it will not find right service or whatever. But here we define this label once, and when we use it under selector here, then under deployment in match labels here, and under template metadata. So, but how it works? So first we need to compile it. And then again, we need to run synf. So it generated this dist. So this is a Kubernetes manifest file which is generated for us. So you see the ports, you see the label, which is just reused in various places. And again, the great thing that you use development language is that you have IntelliSense. So for example, I want to add one more property to label. Say environment def, and then for container, I want to specify image pool policy. And again, you see IntelliSense, you see all kind of help, and I want image pool policy. I want always. So it's much easier to work with typed language when to work with YAML files. So again, if we run, if we compile it, and synthesize the manifest. So you see, now we have one more label in selector,
Right.
and we can see that image pool policy is always, but you write your TypeScript code in this example, which is quite easy to read and have reusable pieces of code.
Yeah, that's really cool. So in the same way that you define your infrastructure, you can do the same with your Kubernetes cluster then.
And you can write unit tests as well, because again, it's TypeScript code, so you can have unit tests for your TypeScript code.
Cool. All right, so we're reaching the top of the hour, Alexander. We could probably go on for an hour more, but we can't. But there's one comment I just want to add to the screen right now. The most fun thing with CDK is that you can destroy what you built with one click.
Yes, so you can run command CDK destroy, and what will it do under the hood? It will delete the CloudFormation stack. So CDK destroy, and that's it.
Yeah, that's easy. All right. So I think there's one thing we need to mention that's happening this week, isn't it, Alexander?
Yes, so this Friday we are going to have conference called CDK Day. So it's annual conference happening this Friday, I guess from like 4 to 8 p.m. So great ending of a Friday. I think Gunnar can post the link to it. But if you want to learn more about CDK from people who create CDK and from community members, it's a great event to join. So feel free. It's free, and yeah,
it's a community-driven event. Lots of people from the CDK community, but also, of course, people from AWS joining in as well. So do join the CDK Day. Not sure when this Friday it's starting.
It's this Friday. I think it's 4 p.m. But
all right,
yeah, based on time zone, you can check. But
yeah. So the link is in the chat. So Alexander, any final words before we end this hour?
Just my final suggestion: give it a try, because it's great to work with infrastructure using your code, using your development environment, which you are familiar with, and writing code in C# which provisions your infrastructure is like really fun. So just do it.
Yeah, I think that's
and
great.
I think you have a lot of resources to start with.
Yeah, definitely. I posted a link to the CDK Day in the chat. There was a question about the workshop. That is a workshop that you can run by yourself anytime you wish. That's a bit further up in the chat, but that's cdkworkshop.com.
Yes.
You can find it there. And with that, thanks everyone for watching. This has been the AWS Nordics Office Hours. I've been joined by Alexander Dragunov talking about infrastructure as code and AWS CDK. So once again, thank you all and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.